Hello and welcome to White Hat Riddles. I'm Angel.
And I'm Krasi, and today
we're going to talk about first steps in your cybersecurity strategy.
Indeed.
So why is this important, right? There's a lot of compliance regulations and other requirements that are happening in multiple industries right now, and we think that it's very important to take a step back and see how to start implementing a comprehensive cybersecurity strategy. That being said, our CEO Krasi here will tell you what's the best first steps.
Yeah, I think the first steps is actually knowing what you have to comply with, right? So let's first differentiate compliance and security. Those are different things. We talked about it in one of our episodes in more details, but basically compliance gives you a framework that you have to comply with. It gives you a set of rules, security controls that you have to apply to your systems. It defines how you manage your data, your customers, your employees' data, and then it gives you some guidance how you can establish basic measures, and then on top of this one, you start building your security. Mm-hmm. So security doesn't come by default, neither compliance. Yeah. You have to do some steps, some initial steps, so that you can start onboarding yourself with specific regulation or with some security framework. The practice shows that the best steps to start is knowing your threat model. That's one of the first steps. Of course, every organization takes different measures as a first step, but one of the main things is knowing your threat model and establishing this across the organization. So let's talk about this one.
I think that the first and most important part is to define what a threat is, right? So to define the threat, first of all, obviously this is based on the most important probably word in cybersecurity, which is context. What is the type of organization that you are managing? What is the potential threat actor that would want to get access to your systems? So by starting with these two, we can narrow down essentially our search for the perfect protection for our systems in general organization, right? Now, there's obviously a lot of tools that will assist you in this, right? But there are also general accepted industry-wide rules about establishing proper threat models, right? Where would you start, Krasi?
To establish your threat model, first you need to know what data you have to secure. What data you provide to your customers, what data you collect from your customers, where is the data stored, what happens with this data during transition. So these are very important questions to start with when you're establishing the threat model. And this also includes knowing your infrastructure, knowing your architecture, what happens with the data when the user provides the data from the user input from the user input field, then all the way from the front end to the back end, how you store your data in the database, basically how the data transitions through the different boundaries. The second thing is knowing who might be interested to compromise your company, knowing your potential hacker, knowing your malicious actor. And this might be your competitors or someone who is well-funded and they have huge budget. They can spend weeks or even months trying to break into your specific company. And knowing your person, knowing your threat actor is very important so that you can define what security expertise the person needs to have so that they can break into your systems. And based on this one, you can secure your applications, infrastructure. Based on this one, you establish rules for the security of your employees, the security awareness of your employees. And the third approach is actually knowing what assets you have and what type of data. And based on the assets, like what operating systems, what type of infrastructure, that's how you can also think about, okay, maybe some script kit is, I have like publicly exposed infrastructure. There is a lot of public services which are available to the internet users, which means that a lot of people with knowledge about OS security, they can try and break into my organization. Or my asset is, let's say, an application which is only provided to the users upon request. And let's say the users are only able to access the application with VPN, or they have to reside in some specific network, then that's a completely different threat model. So to summarize, knowing your threat model is about knowing your assets, your infrastructure, and your potential attackers.
I want to add something special, which is obviously coming in for most of the companies right now. Threat modeling right now is being assisted in the same way that is being abused by hackers via obviously artificial intelligence and other type of algorithms to assist with the speed and the quality of both sides, good and bad. But apart from the speed of implementation, there's also something else. This is a completely new paradigm for business operations, right? Your business continuity will depend a lot on what types of AI tools you implement, starting from a simple chatbot even. You have a chatbot on your website, right? Unless it's your chatbot, which means you have deployed local infrastructure, which very, very rarely will happen. You should also include any form of AI implementation as a multifaceted threat, because you're inheriting the threats from different types of third-party applications or models, which you usually implement via API. So essentially, you need to be very careful when you're designing your threat modeling in 2025 and beyond, and you should take special care in identifying where AI instruments in which ones touch your points, and make sure that you follow latest patches, latest notifications about threats, and specifically AI threats. And one of the things that we will talk later on about, but the important thing is to educate the people that are actually using the AI. What can they expect as something that's expected result or unexpected result, and therefore make sure that your local developers or your internal team are properly implementing basic secure code rules to assist with deploying kind of like a more robust security for your AI infrastructure. But that being said, right, for me, this is one of the most critical parts. But in general, what is the rule to define what is your most critical asset? How do you define this?
You started a very interesting topic. We have to talk about supply chain attacks as well. When you're creating your threat model, you definitely have to consider what's your third-party suppliers. Maybe you're not using only internal applications, but you're using some third-party applications which are available to your users, or you're using some plugins or add-ons to your application. And it might be that one of these plugins will get exploited. And because of this one, your application, the one that you're providing to the users, will also get exploited, right? So that's also something that you have to consider in your threat model. But what's the most critical point in my infrastructure? There is multiple criteria for us to define the most critical point. The first and most obvious one is what asset is the most exposed. What are my public-facing assets, which, let's say, they have some services and open ports which are unencrypted. Basically, everybody who wants to connect, they can try and connect to those ports, or some obsolete services which have not been updated for months or even years. Apparently, these are vulnerable. Everybody can just go and try to exploit one of these unpatched services. Then we definitely have to think about what's my most critical assets. If I have 50 assets exposed to the internet, which of those assets are the most critical to my company? Which of them are most important so that my users can access the application? And basically, these are the components that we consider when we think about what's the most critical. The most critical point is the one which provides easiest access. So if I have a gateway, and then behind the gateway, I have like 50 additional systems, but these systems are isolated. They don't provide direct access to anyone. You have to be within the network. You have to reside in the local network so that you can access one of these assets. Then these are not your most critical point. The most critical point in that case is going to be the gateway, the one which is publicly visible, the one which is a common entry point for internet traffic to your local infrastructure, and the opposite, the one point that your local systems are using to go outside to the internet. So that's going to be my most critical asset in that specific case.
Mm-hmm. And one thing, because obviously we talk about assets, or we use the general cybersecurity terms, right? But for someone, let's say you're running your business, it's a small enterprise, something like 10 to 50 people, for example. I would think that these people would most likely think about their assets as, I have 10 Windows computers, 2 Macs, I have like 3 different Galaxy phones, I use Gmail for this, but Outlook for this one, you know. How does the different infrastructure affect threat modeling or the overall security? How should we treat a system with multiple types of infrastructure elements in the core?
Let's say I'm afraid of having some files executed on my local systems. I'm trying to include some potential threats, eventually somebody infecting my infrastructure with ransomware. Then considering in one infrastructure, you typically have Windows systems, Linux systems, Mac OS. You have some appliances, which are some Unix-based operating systems, usually. Each one of these poses a different risk when it comes to ransomware. When I consider my application server, if the application server is running on a Windows or a Linux machine, and I consider this against the ransomware as a potential threat, then I would definitely put the Windows systems to be more critical, simply because they allow execution of files, and Linux doesn't work that way. You need to have configuration files, you need someone to unpackage the files for you, so it's much more complicated to install, to deploy something on a Linux box. And that's why I would consider in that case the Windows system as posing bigger threat to the organization. That's not necessarily the case, but most often hackers are actually targeting Windows systems. There is more exploits available for the Windows systems, and in general, it's easier to compromise. Very often you have Active Directory, and I see more Windows systems running LDAP and Active Directory, providing management for the Active Directory. These systems provide more functionalities, therefore more interesting they are more interesting for the hackers, and we might want to try and exploit one of these, because it means that I can change a lot of things in the organization after that.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that in this case, it's better to use a unified system for your infrastructure? Let's say, for example, make sure that everyone is using the same type of devices, same type of let's say, you have a consistency across the board. Would you say that this is better in terms of building your system? Is that why, for example, people are subscribing to things like G Suite and Microsoft Office and things like that,
The more operating systems you have in your infrastructure, the harder to protect.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, if you hire a system administrator, he might be very good with protecting Windows systems and managing Windows systems in general, but he might be terrible at securing Linux devices. So I would definitely go for one operating system, if possible, if I have limited resources. It's much easier to apply a specific set of security controls across the organization if you have only Windows or only Mac systems. Mm-hmm. Much harder to deal with different types of operating systems. Also to mention the smartphones, you can run Android, you can run different Chinese operating systems, you can have, again, Apple operating system. So each one of these requires different measures to be managed.
Something that surprised me actually for what you're saying, if I would assume, if I was an uneducated user, that a centralized system would be more secure. Let's say, for example, Windows comes from Microsoft, right? And Linux comes from a lot of places, right? My assumption will always be Microsoft, a product should be safer. Why that's not the case? Why Linux is?
Well, Microsoft provides more security features by design. Again, given that you configure things properly, your firewall, your endpoint security protection, email filtering, and etc. This comes by design in Microsoft. So usually when you have the Windows Defender, even the Windows native Defender, it already provides some security capabilities. The Linux system can be more secure if you configure it the right way. So by design, out of the box, Windows system would be more secure. If you just spawn a freshly installed Linux box, you definitely need to limit the access to the file system, root permissions. You have to carefully define what's happening with the logging of the system, things which in Microsoft would come by design. In Linux, you have to configure them by yourself. However, we have to consider that most of the exploits are designed to work on Windows systems. So simply because Windows is more widely used in the average organization. mostly because of the endpoints, by the way, not that much because of the servers. The servers, they tend to use Linux or Ubuntu very often, but the end users are mostly using Windows in corporate environment. So that's why you have more exploits for Windows systems, and that's why you have more security features by design for Windows systems, and also because it's an enterprise topic. Linux is not that much of an enterprise. Linux you can use either, let's say, Red Hat or CentOS. You can use the free version or the paid version. It's up to you. You can use both. But with Microsoft, more often, almost always, you have to pay for it. So you get the security by design.
And that makes sense, to be honest. And also, I think that the open source community in Linux probably does more effort towards not profit, but securing systems, right? The motivation to ecosystems is different, right? I don't obviously have an opinion. I use Windows services. I'm a newbie. But one thing that you mentioned, but might not be fully understood by everyone, is that when you're creating threat models and when you're thinking about your company security, most of the time you're gonna come to the term code exposure. Right. What does it mean something to be exposed in the context of cybersecurity? And therefore, what is the opposite? I mean, spoiler alert, is isolated, but what is the difference between these two types of assets in the context of threats?
Imagine you have an organization with 50 assets. Mm-hmm. You go to your office, you start working on your computer. The minute you start talking to your colleagues, it might be that you're just communicating in an isolated environment, which means that you don't have a direct access to internet necessarily. That's how military organizations work, by the way. They have an internal network of communication, and only the people connected to the network can see each other and they can talk to each other. At no point they would connect to internet to obtain third-party resources. Now, imagine you go in a different type of organization where everybody needs to connect to internet. You work in a multinational environment. You have to connect with your colleagues from the neighboring country, and you have to get outside of the bubble. You have to go out and start talking to other people on the street, right? Mm-hmm. It's like being in your own apartment versus going out on the street and trying to communicate with different people, let's say during an event, for example. So one is I'm completely isolated and my device is not visible from the internet. The other one is I go outside, I connect to some gateways and servers outside, some maybe Google or Microsoft servers, which already means that I'm browsing the internet. I'm going outside of my bubble, of my apartment. And let's say we have an endpoint, your laptop, for example. Mm-hmm. Right now you have your laptop in front of you. Mm-hmm. Are you connected to the internet? Do you need to be connected to the internet right now?
Yes.
Why so? I mean, I would say you don't have to be.
I have an open document in G Drive, so that's why I'm connected.
Sure, but we are okay. I get your point, but we are in a studio right now. I think you can go without internet. You can save this information on your system offline.
You're right.
What if you are running a server which is running some application? It needs to be accessible to the users. Everybody should be able to go and visit your application, sign up, log in, browse your application. Then you need to not only to be positioned somewhere on the internet, but you need to be reachable by anyone on the internet. Let's say you can limit geographies. You can limit people from, I don't know, North Korea or Russia or the United States, whoever you consider that might be your threat. But still, you are connected to most of the countries out there, and it means that you have a server. This server has an IP address or a domain name and a domain name. And when you provide this server, everybody can connect and they can see what's on your system, what's your operating system. They can try and fingerprint your device. They can see what services you have running on the system, what ports are open, if the communication goes encrypted or unencrypted. Eventually, you provide some certificates. Those certificates might be valid or expired. But you're providing a lot of information. And this means that your system is exposed it's residing outside on the internet, and everybody can try and connect or break into your system.
Yep, makes sense. But the kind of like what I want to find out is that if you're exposed, does it necessarily mean that you are in danger, or just another, let's say, vector of attack that you need to consider? That's.
Let's say, let's put it this way: the Google servers and the Microsoft servers, they're all exposed to the internet one way or another, simply because they have to serve customers. Your banking server, your bank's server is also exposed to the internet. If you visit some services which provides, let's say, capabilities, you can pay your utilities in an application. Their systems are exposed to the internet because you can connect and you can log into the web application. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're in danger. That's why you have an attack surface. That's something that you can consider. And during the attack surface, you are collecting information from threat intelligence solutions about who is trying to compromise your website, who is trying to attack systems like yours with the same operating system, with the same services, or if you have some open weaknesses and vulnerabilities on the target system, you can refer to the threat intelligence solutions to identify what threat actors are trying to exploit this kind of vulnerabilities like the ones you have in your environment. So that's one step. The other step is if you provide proper security assessment, if you initiate proper security assessment to your systems, you're running vulnerability scanning regular, you can run penetration testing or some other red teaming activities, then you are securing your systems. Even though your system is exposed, you have some services which are public and everybody can see them. They are not weak, they are not vulnerable, which means that nobody can exploit those services. However, in 2 months' time, it could be that those services, if you didn't update them, they already became vulnerable, and then you might allow someone to exploit a public-facing system.
Yep. Well, that means, at least for me as a user, that should be very careful and obviously sharing information online. But there's one thing that we usually talk about software, right? We talk about how the hacks happen and things like that. But to have an effective software, you obviously need to provide developers with the proper and adequate documentation. Right. And now it's very common, and we have a lot of cases and a lot of memes online about people sharing documentation with LLM models. For example, something, let's say, not necessarily confidential information, but any form of information that might not necessarily be, should be available for others. And then we have seen examples of how this surfaces in an LLM. It's not necessarily as the information itself, but it comes as a context in specific searches and things like that, right? So I think that there is a case to be made for taking special care of documentation, whether it's API documentation, whether it's like, how do you call that, confidential information, or even your internal policy in the company, right? What should we consider when we talk about sharing documentation?
The API documentation is your map. It defines how your application connects to other applications to exchange information back and forth. While it doesn't pose security risk by itself, it might reveal too much information to someone. And because of this, someone can compromise your company. Without an API documentation, basically, you cannot work with other applications. You cannot work with your partners. Let's say, if you are a bank and you have to provide some services to your merchants, you cannot do it without an API. It's simple as that. So in order to work with someone, you need to have a properly defined API documentation that you provide to your suppliers, customers, partners, whatever, and they're using the API documentation to create communication from their API to your API. Now, when we perform penetration testing, usually we are requesting the API documentation simply because it's going to be much more, it's going to be much easier for us to exploit the API if we know how it works. what's the authentication mechanisms, what tokens are in use, eventually some API keys, they might be left over in the documentation, what parameters the API allows, what security points, what endpoints are in place for the API to communicate, what calls we can make with the APIs. That's an information which is required so that you can examine the security of the API. Without this information, an attacker or a pen tester as well will have to manually create an API documentation, which is a very complex and very time-consuming process. So on the one side, you need this information so much so that you can provide API services. On the other side, you only have to provide this information to whoever wants to connect to your API and whoever is authorized to connect to your API. Now, you might end up having your API public because your business might demand that your API is public. It's simple as that. Your model allows all the third parties to connect to your API, and then that's how you monetize your business. Then your API documentation has to be public, but make sure when you put it on the internet, it doesn't provide any information about tokens, or any API keys, anything which is too sensitive.
Yeah, and this is we're coming back again to what I was telling before that about obviously the how do you call this thing, the AI revolution right now. Now a lot of the AI models are open source, right? Whether it's DeepSeek, whether it's most of them are actually open source, and you also had like the instructions for cloud being leaked online. So this is not an unsolvable problem for hackers once you have the instruction documents for an LLM, specifically the whole document, right? So if you are developing something and you're deploying it inside the pipeline of your organization, you should specifically follow the models that you're using for zero-day vulnerabilities. Due to the speed and essentially the low resources relative to physical resources required to launch an AI attack, I would think that 0 day is much more dangerous than a regular one. Exploitation will be much faster, and it's very likely to actually be exploited on the time of discovery, because that's obviously if you're discovering in a system rather than in testing, right? So very, very dangerous. I would highly recommend to think about how do you implement AI security in your pipeline. Okay, I want to go to something much more common, something that everyone has seen, but probably almost no one knows what actually is it. So when you go in a browser, on the top left corner, there is a little padlock that's named SSL Certificate, right? And if you're a small business or someone that just does some websites just for fun, you know that this thing expires. This is not endless, right? What is this? Tell us, as a newbies, what is an SSL certificate and why does it expire?
I guess you've seen the disclaimer: this website is not secure. Do not move forward.
Yeah. Continue anyway.
No, the connection to this site usually is secure, even though your certificate is expired. However, the certificates proves who is behind the server, who is the owner. If that's a legit server, if that's a legit application, a legit provider of services, and the certificate defines if you can trust this person on the other side or not. And by person, I mean the organization, the servers. Mm-hmm. If you have a secure certificate, valid certificate, usually that means that your connection is, your system is communicating with a trustworthy system on the other side, and you can be confident who is providing the services. Now, simply having a certificate doesn't guarantee that this is the correct server on the other side. So if somebody compromised this organization and changed the server with another, and changed the certificate with another certificate which is secure but issued by someone else, you might still see the secure symbol. It doesn't necessarily mean that that doesn't guarantee that this is the trusted remote site, the one that you want to communicate with. But it's something, you better trust the certificate. I mean, there is nothing else you can do.
Who is issuing the certificate?
There is two types of certificates. One's issued by certificate authorities, which is an industry-approved organization, trusted organization that all the organizations are paying, and they are doing the due diligence for you. They check if you're a legit organization, if your domain names are matching your servers. They check if you provide encrypted communication to your users, and they give you the certificate. And they're saying this certificate is issued by this certificate authority, which guarantees that this connection is secure for the user. However, it could be that the organization is self-issuing certificates, especially if you have internal applications which are serving your employees, for example, some ERP system which is meant to be used only inside the organization. Then you can self-generate certificates. It doesn't have to be a certificate generated by officially approved certificate authority. Now, when it comes to security, a lot of people are asking me, is it safe if my certificate has expired? Now, the fact that your certificate expired more often doesn't mean that the connection is not secure. It might be the case, but usually the connection is still going to be secure. It's still going to be encrypted. However, the other side cannot be verified, which means that you might be communicating with a malicious server instead of the legit server. So nobody can sniff the communication. However, if you're communicating with a malicious server, then the person who is controlling the remote server, they have your communication anyways.
Sounds much more important than I expected from a little padlock in the corner, right?
Yeah, that's why if you're running an application, make sure that you renew your certificate. Also, there is different forms of certificates. Some of them provide extended information about the organization. For example, if you're a bank or let's say a very important institution like, revenue agency, then you might, you would like to provide more information to the users, and then you're getting the extended certificate, which provides additional information about the organization. But if I'm just a small online shop and I don't care that much about this one, I would probably be fine with the normal certificate.
You know what, I'm curious, I actually don't know this, but do you think that SSL certification matters for search? Do you think that Google or Google, okay, no other search engines, but do you think they promote or demote sites without an SSL?
I believe Google considers the SSL certificates of the organization when they're doing the SEO
ranking,
optimization ranking.
Yeah, I think so as well. Because otherwise, I wouldn't think that they were promoting people without an SSL. But yeah.
Yeah, also important to consider, by the way, you might have a secure connection, but if you're running a certificate which is, let's say, pretty old, it has a lot of vulnerabilities, it might be that someone can be able to crack the conversation. They might be able to crack the certificate in a way that they will start sniffing the communication, even though it says it's encrypted, So also make sure that you're using the latest possible certificates, the latest possible encryption methods for your certificates.
Yeah. So there's something different that I want to ask you right now, and I will give you guys the context. So, when I was living in the UK, right, I had, let's say, for example, that's 10, 15 years ago, right? I have like 200 accounts in different types of things, right? And I recently got like notification from Google that I have 200 accounts leaked, right? But these are all like accounts that I haven't used in like 10, 15 years, and they are all using the same password. Back in the day, I was using exactly the same password. Like now, this is a completely different one, obviously, maybe. But I got this notification. So I was like thinking, what does this mean, right? That means that Google or Apple in this case, like because it's an iPhone, has the ability to read from somewhere what type of my non-encrypted information is shared, because how would they know if my account is leaked if they don't know? both things, right? And then I started thinking about some of the conversations that we had in the office, and you told me even our product has the capabilities with some help to actually find information on the dark web, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So this is a topic. I think we will have an episode for this, like a full one, but just to give like a little bit of for myself actually some information about what actually is happening on the dark web. What can you find there? And how does Abel know that my password leaked? I'm very curious about that.
Just give you a brief answer. I'm not going in details because indeed we'll have a separate episode on the topic. It's extremely interesting. I have a lot of people asking me, have you ever been on Darknet? What does it look like? Can you really find information about drugs, about weapons, leaked passwords and databases? And is it so dangerous? Well, yes, you can find this information. But are they not going to put me in jail if I visit Darknet? I mean, they were going to detect me and then they put me in jail. No, it doesn't work like that. But if you go and buy weapons on Darknet, it might be that the agencies will find out, even though it's a closed network, like separate network. And however, yes, the agencies, they also have servers on Darknet. So sometimes they might be sniffing the communication, which you think is quite secure because you're running on Darknet. But yeah, on Darknet you can literally find anything. It's like a hidden game. It provides passwords, weapons, databases. So usually, if I compromise someone's database and I'm looking to monetize my activities, I would probably go on Darknet and I will say, hey, I have Amazon's database because I compromised 2,000 accounts yesterday. And I have emails, passwords, IBANs, some juicy information. And then I'm putting this information on Darknet. I'm selling it to someone who might be interested. And that's how the organizations like Microsoft and that's how the OSINT providers know if your account has been breached. It has to be announced by someone that there is a data breach in one platform or vendor, and they have the information and they have this and that. And usually they're requesting some money. They are extorting the vendor to pay some ransom. Otherwise, they are leaking the information on the internet. There is a lot of different scenarios, but basically, yes, that's how you know. If your information is on Darknet, then the vendors know about it and they ask you to change your password.
Okay, but let's say dark web, right? I've seen some videos online from people that use dark. I haven't been myself, but they say they use it not necessarily for crime, right? Can you use the dark web for not crime? There's you're not going to discuss politics here, but there's if you are libertarian, for example, you don't want a government to track you. Can you use dark web in a light way? Let's call it this way.
Probably you can, even though I've never seen it.
Okay, so it's not a common occurrence.
I mean, using the only means of using Darknet as a network, as a way to communicate to the world, is not having yourself exposed. The one that we talked in the beginning, right? I want to be completely anonymous. Maybe I want to reveal some spicy secrets about corruption, about politics, which I want to be secure that nobody's going to find me. Probably I want to browse something. Let's say I might be a journalist and I'm collecting information about the mafia. And then I want to stay behind the scene. I want to collect as much information as possible. Then I'm going to use Darknet as a network to connect to the world. But like publishing things on Darknet or looking for something, using it as a marketplace, like accessing all the websites which are only available when you're connected to Darknet, I've never seen anyone using it in an ethical or legit way or with good intentions. I cannot think of such scenario,
Okay, so
I might be wrong.
So information gathering. Well, I think what's the?
I would say drop in the comments if you guys think that Darknet can be used for non-malicious and ethical purposes. If it can be beneficial for something for the society somehow. Drop it in the comments. Let us know.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, I'm curious. I want to know. There's no. Usually, when you use a technology, there needs to be a motivation, right? Either let's say a monetary motivation or convenience or something like this. Yeah. And I just don't see it. When someone say multi-layer Tor browser, I'm like, yeah.
Yep.
Hey Chrome, how you doing? Okay, so I have something for the end of the episode, something that you haven't seen, which is a hacker movie scene, right? I think the name of the movie is Swordfish in English. In Bulgaria, is a little bit different. Actually, it's very close. They still use the fish's name, but it sounds much better.
Indeed, and do you know how many passwords like this I've seen in my practice?
No way, no way. So I actually forgot. I watched the video a little bit before we started. If you are a child or you are a parent of a child that's with you, now it's the time to stop watching, because that let's say that specific scene of the movie is explicit. So
are you saying that we're an adult content
we
podcast?
definitely will need to put the above 18 marker for this episode for sure. So I'm not quite sure actually how to I won't give you any leeway. It's a hacker scene from the movie Swordfish. They're showing something. I wanna see your reaction on specifically the way that the motivation for them hacking fast.
You know, I still remember when I was 12, 14, and my parents were watching American movies on the internet and on the TV.
On
and
the
they were
dial-up.
like, and then at some point they were like, close your eyes now.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, sure, I'm closing them. Like,
but it's a hacker movie, right?
it's a hacker movie. Let's see it.
All right, yeah, we can play the movie now, George. Thank you. All right, let's go. Those are friends John Travolta and Halle Berry.
No, you really should have let me buy
know.
you a suit, Stanley.
I'm happy with what I'm wearing, thank you.
Yours is bliss.
I mean, I wish we had an office like this. Yeah. That's what people imagine when they see hackers, by the way.
Oh, that's a hacking office, right?
Yeah. I mean,
All these hackers out there.
yeah, they're hacking and
They're having
slashing
so
right
much
now.
fun hacking.
Yeah. There wouldn't be shortage of talent if this was the actual office. I totally forgot that he plays in the movie, by the way.
I think he did as well. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. Wolverine, man of many talents.
Stanley? Gabe.
Big Stan, nice suit.
Thanks.
Now they say it's the clothes that make the man.
You buy it?
Hope not. Drink.
Look, I flew 1,500 miles for this meeting. How about we get to the point?
No, actually.
All right. Golden movie clips, thank you.
Grand. That's not the point. Helga, meet Stanley.
Hello, Stanley.
Helga.
How do I say this in a non-offensive way?
Gabriel.
This is an HR from the 90s, I
Maybe
think.
you can help me with something, Stanley.
Or
I think we'll crop this part. You already said it.
yeah.
What do you think?
So this is just the Department of Justice.
Is this hacking or is this social engineering? Like,
No.
I feel like they're trying to convince him to provide his username and password.
No.
I mean, 5 bodyguards. Oh, that's already a 6th bodyguard
Yep.
playing in the game now, and that's a good way to convince someone in providing information. And I've always said that it's much easier to convince someone that way with probably with a baseball ball or with a baseball bat or with a pistol. It's much easier to convince someone to provide information instead of hacking them.
I think she will update the strategy right now with something much more convincing. But I want you, despite this scene, I want you to see how he's pressing the buttons.
I'll focus on the technical side.
Yes. Look,
I promise.
he's in the hacking mode, I think.
Yeah.
Crackers in the world can do this in 60 minutes.
I think we lost the sound, but maybe we'll add it later.
We can read by the lips.
Yeah. The most important part is the way that he hacks right now. Just watch this. A gun helps.
I told you.
Very
I told you.
motive.
Don't remember the movie. It was a long time ago, but I told you a gun always helps.
1 minute to hack the Ministry of Justice.
Yeah.
How about that? Look at that.
Is he a piano player or is he a hacker?
Look at that.
Oh, then.
Look.
Oh, access denied.
I'm so
That's
surprised.
A terrible thing.
Yeah, so surprised.
She's good.
He tried Trump Jr. Enter.
I think he's now training his focus skills.
He's not pressing enter often enough, actually. I think.
I think he's not playing fast enough on the keyboard.
19.
Focus.
No,
Focus
he's
plan.
clapping. I think this.
Clap is it stands for backslash.
Yeah, I think that we should add this to the kind of like the workflow. Once they complete, once the hacker completes a task, he claps. So we know they're working. I think that's more than 60 seconds. Was it Slavic language there?
Too bad. You gotta die. No, wait.
Yeah, I wish we had more time to check. I'm quite sure that these IPs will lead somewhere. You know.
But could be.
I think they.
You mean that these IPs are exposed?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I was distracted as well. Did he succeed?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. I think.
Enter.
Yeah, nice.
Access granted.
Access granted. Well, that's a lot of
Amazing,
hacking stuff
amazing.
out there.
So just quickly to close this one.
Do we even have to discuss it? I mean, yeah. Please go with your question. Apologies.
So my question is about the motivational strategies, right? I think working under pressure, right?
I think when you have the right motivation, you can crack any system in the world.
Yeah, but don't do the Department of Justice, guys. It's not worth it. You know, unless you are doing it from the dark web that we discussed, I think it's not going to be okay. With this one.
Sharing my professional opinion on this one, though, please.
Yeah.
Hacking doesn't happen that way. It's not, you don't just play with your fingers on the keyboard and then some magic happens. Apparently he was trying different passwords from what I saw. He was trying to brute force something, but it doesn't work this way. You have to configure your systems. A lot of stuff is automated already, and you're not typing like crazy things on the terminal. It simply doesn't work like that. You have to research your system. You have to, your target system. You have to identify what services you have, play with the, let's say, with the authentication, with the privileges, and it takes much more time. You need to use some exploits or develop some exploits. So these are a lot of things which I didn't see in that movie. I've seen them more in Mr. Robot, for example, if you know the series. But this one wasn't about hacking.
Yeah, I think they should make more movies like this because there were no shortage of hackers in 2008, 10 years after the show. Unfortunately, right now it's not exactly like that. I think we should emphasize cinema on focusing on the good things in hacking, right?
Yep.
All right. Cool. Well, I think that this will be the end of this episode, guys. Hope you learned something. What I would say, most important things in this, make sure that you understand what's your attack surface, where can the threat come from, and most importantly, from my perspective, if you're using AI, this is not completely safe. Make sure that you understand what the threats are and how you can handle them, obviously in the cheapest and the soonest way. The sooner you start implementing AI security, the better for your organization.
Drop and let us know in the comments what security topics you would like to talk about. Is there some topics that you're very interested to hear? Maybe everybody's going to type Facebook security, but let's give it a try.
Yeah.
And
what movie would you like to see next?
Hacking movies. It should be hacking movies.
Yeah, 100%.
Just to say.
All right. Have a good one, guys. And if you want to see something, make sure that you put a comment down or reach out from the contacts below if you need any help with your cybersecurity from our team.
Thanks for being with us. See you next time.
See you.